Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another edition of In the Metal. In the Metal, every week we are take a look at a different facet, a different aspect of the world of watchmaking, independent watchmaking in particular. And every week we are joined by a fantastic guest to give us a little bit of an insight into their work, their practice, their techniques, and maybe get a little look around their atelier and also have time to take a look at some of their amazing watches. This week, we are concentrating not so much on the mechanical side of watchmaking, but in the aesthetic end of it. And that includes particularly the dials. And our guest tonight is an absolute master of some of the grand arts of traditional watchmaking, specializing in grand feu, enamels, and using rare stoned, polished stone dials, etc. His work is amazing. And I am very glad to welcome direct from Texas, which used to be North Carolina, so we've shifted an hour in the time zones, folks. But welcoming from Texas, Mr. Dan Spitz. How are you this evening, my friend?
How you doing, Johnny? Good to see you, man.
If I was any better, I'd burst. And that's, So all is good. All is good at this end, so it is.
That's so, good to hear. Good to hear.
What about you? How are things going with you?
I'm sitting in my finishing room we're still under construction, and it's coming out. The floors are just about done, and they're doing trim and breaking down walls. And I'm getting real excited that we're every day just a little bit closer to having more space for machines, and more space for everything, really. More comfort to be able to push forward and make some masterpieces from the United States of badass America.
Badass America, but hopefully a badass America that is going to be a better and a happier and a bouncier and a more, get back to the old place that we do. Anyway, I am the worst in the world because I said I would not go near this, and so moving swiftly along, as the man said. So how long do you reckon before you get your atelier?
I'm not sure, because as today was a day where the construction people showed up and worked a good half day, and then one of them contracted COVID. So everyone had an exit stage left, so we'll wait to see what happens there. It's a slow process. We're doing everything meticulously correct. And I mean, it's everything from lights to floors to it's full construction in many rooms here. So however long it takes, and then we'll set up and away we go.
Well, here you if any man in the watch industry is used to load-ins, it would be you.
There's a big pile of truck stuff somewhere down the other end of this place, just waiting to be loading in. But well, the good part is finally I can have some space for some, not necessarily bigger machines, but the weight of the machines that we use. I think most of you have learned along the road, if you've been watching our show, they don't weigh 200 or 300 pounds. Some of these machines are a couple tons. Yeah. So you have to have the facility to be able to move them in, by forklifts and whatnot, and have a place where they can be very stable. It's funny. It's really funny, right? The stuff we make is sometimes invisible to the human eye, or most of the time is invisible to the human eye. But the machines we have brings the whole neighborhood over to go, like, what the hell's going on here?
Oh man! So because whenever some of those machines were made, there were no lightweight alloys or anything like that. There, like it was solid lump of iron.
Well, the aspect actually is we need the stability of no vibration. The slightest vibration that you would think it isn't a vibration will show up in the finishing of our parts. You'll see a lot of even the smaller type machines that may be a few hundred pounds that you'll see on a lot of watchmakers in their shops. You'll see the motors the older school motors, not the newer kind, will actually be like off to the left somewhere with a belt, and you wonder like, what the hell, dude? Well, those little shaky little rubber belts, they don't let the vibration transmit from the motor to the top of the spindle of the machine, and if you really want to take away the next level of vibration, you actually mount it on something separate. And if you're ever wondering why, I gave you a quick lesson of stupidity. That's what we do here, right?
Yeah, there's a Newburn watchmaker.
A whole other world.
1,800-pound jig borer.
Oh, bro. That's not good.
No. It'd be
I know the feeling. I just saw my lights jig borer. I was swinging away last week again, moving that around in the machine room. So
yeah. Here, do you know something, Dan? We have a guest, and we've got a fantastic guy waiting for us on the wings here. Will we go over and say hello to him?
I think so, because this is going to kick ass tonight.
This is another side of the whole watch thing. So we're going straight over to La Chaux de Fonds and in Switzerland to get talking to Bastien Vuilliomenet. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Bastien.
Yeah, perfectly. It's rare.
Hey, Bastien.
Thank you.
I've been practicing all day.
Oh, right. You did right.
Hey, Bastien, how you doing, bro? Good to see you.
I'm fine. Yeah. Good to see you.
Brilliant. Yeah, look, Bastien, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Folks, just to let you know that Bastien is a founding partner of one of the coolest artisanal indie watch brands over the last 4 or 5 years. A slightly different approach to some of the independent watchmakers who make everything from scratch. Bastien and Lundis Bleus are specialists in making watches that would literally knock your socks off when you see them. And Dan, we're going to try something here because before we actually get talking about it, we have this little graphic that was running yesterday, and this gives you an idea of the variety, the diversity, the different types of materials that are used to create these absolutely stunning watches. And so, Bastien, hopefully that gives people a bit of an idea what you're about. And so it is a great pleasure to welcome you to In the Metal and to find out what makes it all happen.
It's my pleasure to be here, and let's go ahead.
You're the man.
So Bastien, why don't you just explain to me, like, because I'm always been an enamel kind of guy. I've started very early watchmaking in my life as a little young child. I have many American pocket watches on my bench. And as we all know, the higher grade watches were all enamel. And then again, later on in life, when I returned to watchmaking, again, seeing them again after maybe, they're some of them over 100 and some odd years old. The enamel's still holding up wonderfully. Some of them having hairline cracks or whatnot from other watchmakers not taking the hands off usually correctly. How did you get into such a beautiful art? Because that, to me, it's the most incredible dials there are. They last forever, basically, if you don't really...
You're right.
Take the hands off the wrong way and crack the dials or whatnot. How did you get this horrible disease to sit there and figure out this lost art, which is basically a lost art of perfection?
It was in about 2010 or a little bit earlier. I was working as a watch designer at Corum, so a Swiss brand in La Chaux de Fonds, and they were still doing some crafts like enamel, but not in-house, through different craftsmen around Switzerland. And I really got interested in this because I love colors in general, and many crafts métiers d'art, usually engraving, you have the metal, which I love, but the enamel adds the color to it. And it was something, always mysterious. You didn't know what enamel is really about, what it is. how does it work? The few enamelers I knew were always writing in magazines that it's very difficult, complicated. Sometimes it doesn't work. You don't know why. And yeah, I got really interested to understand what is it. And so I asked a few enamelers in Switzerland, but most of them didn't reply, or the few replied said they were not interested in sharing. But the fun fact was that at the same time, they were all complaining that there were nobody trying to take over this art, and that it would be lost at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is maybe the way that some enamelers sees this art in Switzerland, but it's very vivid actually in Japan, in the US. There are many very good talented enamelers in the UK too. In Russia, great school in Spain. In Switzerland, it was really a type of art dedicated to watches, and they are kind of secretive. And the last class of enamelers graduated in the 70s in Switzerland, and then it was over. So you didn't have a way to study it or to learn it unless you find a master who would share it. So when nobody wanted me to become like a student or whatever, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to learn this craft by myself. Mm-hmm. So I bought a kiln, I bought some enamels, so I had to search where. 10 years ago it was different. Now it's maybe easier, but 10 or 12 years ago, where do I buy enamels? What is it? Because you type enamel on the internet, and is it paint? Is it what kind of material is it? And then you have to find the suppliers if they are still going, if they're still existing. You received your package with some enamels, and now what do I do? So I bought some books to read about it. I tried to find some tutorials or videos on the internet, but it was not as developed as it is today. And so I failed a lot, like crazy, it was failure after failure. And sometimes I was really on the verge of, giving up, because I couldn't understand why doing this had this reaction, and I had to find out by myself, because there were nobody to tell me, oh, you did this wrong, or you should try this or this. So I have to trust my intuition and keep going and try and fail a lot. Mm-hmm. 1,000 times to have one thing. Okay, and then after failing a lot, you understand what action gives what reaction, and then you understand. And when you have that, it's a huge increase in your quality. But what I did like 10 years ago is nothing comparable to what I can do today. And hopefully it will be even way better in 10 years from now.
See, once again, this is an interesting story, Johnny, even just from Bastien's angle, because I've dived in myself a little bit to try to see, hey man, how is this enamel done? Because I was thinking about possibly moving that into my workshop. And even now in the last few years, as far as I'm concerned, there's no information and no correct information. It's more like a dizzying information, if there's any, because you don't know what's truth out there still today. So 10, 12 years ago when you started, it's a nightmare. And then being, in Switzerland, when people just don't want to give out secrets, which stems from the whole watchmaking kind of persona, if you know what I mean, for so long, up until the internet, when I was growing up or going to school at WOSTEP, that's the only place, as far as getting the watchmaking secrets into our hands as watchmakers, that there was. You had to get that scholarship above even normal schooling and after apprenticeship, because even apprentice will only show you back then so much. And then when you get to Switzerland, nobody wants to give out their secrets in watchmaking, because that's their job in Switzerland, which the rest of the world is very hard to understand. They think this, again, three little watchmakers in a shed on the top of a Swiss mountain, and please come over here and we'll show you everything we know to pass it on. But it really is, massive companies, the size of car companies, just massive, thousands and thousands of people, and they have a job, a full-time job. They want to protect their job, so they're not going to give away the secrets, especially in complications at the top level, because there's only a couple guys in every company. So it's hard. So it's even worse with you guys because there's like this many enamelers, you know. So where do you find that except, you know, starting fires in your own home like you did and hoping not to burn your house down?
Yeah, I burned the carpet a few times, but not the whole house. Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm looking at that. I'm like, yeah, let's see, enamel, fire, oven. You know, it's a good chance you're burning something down, bro.
You're working with insane temperatures, aren't you? You're working with 800 to 1200 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, 1200 is a little bit too high because most of the metal you will enamel on, the alloy will not stand. It's usually between 700 to 900, but basically 800 and 850 is the temperature of enameling. Some colors are really sensible to temperature, so especially reds or orange or some yellows. So then you have to fire maybe a little bit longer, but at a lower temperature. And what is sometimes complicated when you have a one color dial, it's in a way it's easier and it's not that easier. Let me explain. It's easier because you have one color that will react the same with the temperature all around the dial. It's difficult to have it really homogeneous with that, because you have one defect and you see that when you have a one color monochrome dial. When you have several colors, so each color will react differently to temperature, you know, because basically enamel is a type of glass, and inside you have some oxides that will give colors when it's heated and when it cools down. So they will react together. So if, let's say, on a dial I have 5 colors, they have interaction between the 5 colors, and in the end some will fuse earlier than others. So you have to keep a balance between not firing too long, but firing long enough so that all the enamels have actually fused. So it's some way it's not only physics or chemistry. It's more about alchemists, you know.
Alchemy.
You know? Yeah. You have to follow your intuition and you have to feel the enamel, how it works, because if I had to make 1,000 dials, then I would maybe go to a scientist and say, okay, I have to make this series, what quantity, the exact temperature, burn a very accurate furnace or oven to do that. But when each dial is different, you never can test 10 times to have one dial good. So you have to feel your instinct and try to have
and you refire, right? Because you have to fire once a lot of times, and then you have to sand it down, right? You'll show us in a little bit, I'm sure, some samples, hopefully, and then you have to refire it again, which obviously can cause cracks or just mishaps. So not every dial makes it. Number one, that much I know from experience. This is a very difficult, people. Whoever's tuned in here, whoever was watching later. This is not like you put some powder on the metal like you might see on a YouTube video somewhere, and then put it in. These are watch dials. They're mirrors when they're done. It's some of the most beautiful, it's breathtaking when you see something that like Bastien has done. They're not just normal enamel dials with printed letters. When you see them, they're masterpieces, you know, of how he chain links all the little... well, you can show and explain that the picture.
We'll come to
it's just incredible the length that goes into doing what Bastien does.
It's a very time-consuming craft. You know, maybe I guess that approximately 30% of the dials won't go to the end because either they are deformed or there is a crack. Not so much, but it's. The problem with, or the issue with the enamel dials, you have to assemble them on a watch or in a watch, so they have to be quite accurate in terms of dimensions. When you make jewelry, if it's a little bit smaller, bigger, wider, it's not really an issue usually. But for a watch, you know, it has to go inside the case. You have to put hands on top of that. So if your dial is not 1 millimeter, but 1.10 or 1.20, it won't work sometimes. So you have, this is the tricky part with enamel for watches. It has to be accurate, and as it is protected by a crystal, you want it to be as perfect as possible because it will last for centuries or more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've seen that. That's how what I wanted to say at the very beginning, that not only are they very beautiful, but their enamel dials are the most robust dials. All other dials, when I used to do vintage, we always used to, in the old days, take them out to be reprinted and repainted. If they're just stamped, they only last so long from the sun, from someone leaving them, just being outside. Just basically, when enamel dials, they just plow through everything. Again, most of the time I've seen in after sales service is when the watchmaker goes in and he just, he's just by hand. It's with his hand levers or just doesn't know what he's doing kind of watchmaker, and they'll crack. You have to be, a totally different way to take the hands off for enamel. You just have to know that.
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise, they will last for centuries. Like you said, we have enamels that they dig up in like the crypts, and it's still there.
Yeah, absolutely. But at first, they to make white or black dials, they didn't have many options. So that's why there were so many enamel dials, because it was the way to do dials back in the 19th century or even before. But after came some polymers, or plastics or varnish or paints, and it's good. I mean, it's not that I'm saying that it's a bad material, but you can take a dial that is 100 years old and it's as vivid as it was when it was done 100 years ago, and it's not really the same for, let's say, lacquered or varnished dial, because they will get damaged by heat, by UVs, and enamel dials are totally resistant to those weather effects. So they last a very, very long period of time.
It is actually a spectacularly beautiful medium whenever it's finished. I know the processes are complicated. There's a lot. It's an elaborate process to create. But I'm going to just show one here, which is a cloisonné enamel, and the colours in that are just. So you could not replicate that using really any other kind of material, could you?
Maybe you can, but what would be the point? What is cool with enamel, when you add the enamel on the dial, it's basically like some fine sand, So you don't really see the color or the gradation of colors. So it's always exciting when you put in the kiln and you remove it. Then it has to cool down, because at first the color it's maybe about red, and then it's as it cools down, the colors appears, and then you can see the first after the first firing, the first kind of colors it will be in the end, the first kind of gradations, and it's always exciting because no dial in enamel is always the same, so it's always a new experience, and that's why it's so mesmerizing and fascinating to do.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, Bastien, you're like standing by the oven sometimes still, right? Waiting for it to come out and going, I wonder what it's going to look like.
I make these like to test the colors. So this is on silver, and I use different, just to test how will the color look like after it is fired. Because you see, enamel looks like this at first. So basically, it's a kind of glass. And you see, there are some lumps the size of small sugar, and you have to grind them in what we call an agate mortar and a pestle. So it's something like this. We use agate because it is a material that is mostly free from porosities. So when you put the enamel in it, like this, and then you add some distilled water, because you don't want to put some dirt or bad things in it.
Wow.
And then I won't do it because it's kind of hard. I have to use
and you'll destroy it. Yeah.
But then you have first to grind these to make it smaller, and it's a whole process, to have it as the size of the grain must be as regular as possible, because the regular it is, the best it is for the end result. If you have grain this bigger and smaller, then it's more likely to have some bubbles during the firing. So this is the first step. You start with these tiny little pieces of enamel, and then you refine it until you reach this. This actually is not very good, but this is that kind of size. It's like you have some sand on a beach and you put some water.
Right.
It's like this, and it has to be cleaned very quickly, because if I take an enamel that has just been ground in the mortar, it will be completely white, because you have fines in the enamel, so it's very, very small particles of enamel, and you fire like this, you use that and you fire your dal, it will be completely cloudy, so you won't have the transparency, because most enamel I use are transparent, but it also exists when it's opaque or opalescent. But only this, preparing the enamel, run the right size, what is the right size, because you have some theories. Okay, it must be 80 mesh, or maybe it is, maybe it is not. Now I see when I grind it, I take when it's the size of sand. I can judge by the eye. Okay, the size is good, and I can move to the next step. I won't take like a tool to measure the size of the grain. It's by eye that you
by experience. Yeah. By trial and error and years of errors.
Yeah. I love enamel. There's something about it that it's just, it has there's nothing else looks like it. I know we get we can use lacquers and things like that nowadays, and but that grand feu enamel is something that is just
it's deep.
It stirs the emotion. It stirs the emotions, man.
It's you must be a little bit crazy to do that, because it's so long.
You must be a lot of bit crazy, like the rest of us, bro.
Probably, I think so. I hope so.
We're making invisible watch parts, and you're grinding up blue dust. We're nuts, man. But what comes? Look, the end result of our hard work, our labor of love. That's really what you're explaining here to people, that they can understand that you're not just squirting a can of whatever color that we need. And that's just what me and Johnny are trying to show to everybody. You're not just buying a can of different colors nowadays in modern technology, squirting it onto a dial and like brushing it on and baking it like in a bake a Suzy oven like the little kids have. It's not what goes on here still today. And the theory of how it works and how enamel is done has not changed, will not change, and the secrets are not being passed on, as Bastien said. So you got to kind of figure out your own way, and what you're doing is extremely hard work, ingenuity, and 95% love.
There's an exception here, isn't there, Dan? Because we have seen in some other aspects of watchmaking, of the mechanical end of it, where there is a handing down of skills and techniques and finishing approaches to this. So here is a sector, a little element of watchmaking that is pretty much insular, that people are not willing to pass on their know-how. And that is interesting, because enamel does go back to, I was doing a little bit of research during the week. I think the first recorded example of enamel is 1300 BC. And
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's older than like white rice, bro.
it's over there. And so it is something that has been generationally handed down over the millennia. And I think I think it was tailor made for watchmaking. So in the 17th century, you were seeing enamel. Grand Feu enamel was a perfect medium for watchmakers to print their dials on, or to paint their markings on, and pieces which are still, as you say, exist today, centuries later. So I just find I find it as a little bit of an exception that this nature of handing down information really doesn't extend to enameling. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe in Switzerland, but you go. There is a quite famous school in St. Petersburg in Russia, and I've seen some works of enameler. It's just crazy how good they are. You know,
in Russia, yeah.
Maybe not everywhere, but this is a pity that in Switzerland we don't have like an official school anymore to teach that. But I think that Richemont has made with its Academy of Métier d'Art or something like that. I don't exactly know the name, but I think they try to keep the art going by teaching to having some apprentice. I don't exactly know the details, but I think maybe some people have understood that it may be worth it to try to keep it alive. You know.
Right.
Without a doubt.
As we all know, in watchmaking, la culture was always very big with enamel and other companies too. But most of the other companies would outsource, right? But JJ was they do a lot. So to keep the tradition going is wonderful. But to break out in independent watchmaking and brand yourself as independent watchmaker and be able to produce these. It's really cool, man. It's incredible. It's great for all of us to watch you. We're all watching you, what you do, and we know it's not normal. It's not just regular pocket watch, white enamel dials with black numerals on them. They're works of human art, and that's what you do.
We are going to see.
I hope that the message is heard, because sometimes it's difficult for people to understand. Why is that special? You know, I have a blue die, but when, for example, I take this, this is a sample, so I can handle it with the bare hands. But you cannot reach that.
You
know that it doesn't do justice to it. You know.
It radiates the color.
Yeah. And specifically
a depth to the color as well. It's not just 1D or 2D. It is 3-dimensional, isn't it? Really, there is a depth to it.
If we talk just a little bit about the technique of I start with this little silver.
Yeah.
So it's sterling silver, so it has copper in it, because I know that some enamelers work with fine silver because it's better for the color in the end, but the strength of the material is, in my opinion, not good enough, because the slightest shock increases the risk of having cracks in the enamel with fine silver. This is my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but sterling silver has more strength. So I use that, and then we match in on the back the little pockets, because the fun part is that you have enamel on one side, but on the other side too. Because if you put enamel on one side only, it will bend. And here is an example of a dial that is not flat. And you can see there is, it's difficult to show.
But you know what it is?
Back you have also enamel, but you can see that it's not flat at all. And this is a reject. It was a test, and maybe I didn't put enough counter enamel on the back at some point, and then the enamel on top. They don't have the same rate of shrinking or expansion. You know, when you heat the metal on the enamel, they will get bigger.
Yes, expand.
And not at the same rate, and then when they cool down, they will cool down not at the same rate either. So at some point you have the metal that has stopped cooling, and the enamel will continue, and then it will like cool the metal, you know. And if you don't put enamel on the back at all, then it will crack, and you can see maybe on this little piece here.
Okay. Cracked.
Well, it's not the best camera I have here, but
yeah, but these are still, even the rejects are beautiful pieces.
Yeah.
Like,
you just send me to reject this. That's good enough, bro. You know.
Man, you got ahead of me there.
While just preparing for the episode, I just wanted to bake one reject to have the counter enamel like polished how it is when it's out of the kiln. But I made something else afterward, and I let it in the kiln a little bit too long. So just to show you how it can go, you know.
Oh wow, potato chip. That's a potato chip, bro.
Yeah, because we use a trivet like this, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And it took the shape of it. So this, I can send it to you if you want, but you want me to.
I don't know if I can make a movement that the hands that the hands can, as it goes up and down. Maybe we got something new.
Maybe.
We got a new pattern between us, Bastien.
We got that, yeah.
Yeah, since the hands in the shape of a heart, you know, that expand also.
Yeah.
I seen that with a Breguet watch yesterday. With the hands actually.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah,
it was beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So, but it leads to a question then, because things can go wrong. So, does that happen often? Where there's what is the strike rate? How many dials? How many times do you have to?
Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure, but I think that 30% of the dial I start won't make it to the end.
That's
the reject rate is about 30%. But when it's on a simple dial, okay, it's annoying because it's maybe 8 or 10 hours of work that go to waste. But when something bad happened on a cloisonné dial, which requires weeks of work, then it's not a story. And it happened to me with one of the Viper. So there was some kind of deformation, and now I use it as a template. You know, when I have to make a new dial like this.
Yeah.
Usually I work like this. So I make the drawing, the outlines of the design.
Right.
What is in red is I use gold wire, which is 0.10 millimeters in thickness. So just take one piece to show you. I think it must be, it's so something like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's quite soft. This one is not annealed, so it's still it has some strength. But when I put it in the kiln, it's very, very soft. You blow on it and it
breaks. Yeah.
So I have to take that. For the red is 0.10, and the black lines it's even smaller. It's 0.05.
Yeah.
So when you are like 2 or 3 weeks in a dial and something wrong happened, it's better not to be around me.
Yeah.
For a couple hours.
Let's have a look at this, because what you're talking about there is, let's start here.
So maybe just to explain the process a little bit. So as I said, we start with a blank of sterling silver. Then we match in the recess on the back so that we can apply some counter enamel. And we will fire some what is called flux enamel. So it's a transparent enamel that is very good to go on silver. It doesn't change the color. It actually makes the dial. You can see on the picture it's very white, but you have a thin layer of enamel, maybe 0.5, 0.05 or less than a tenth of a millimeter.
The white background is enamel, yeah?
No, it's not white. Actually, what you see is silver, but on top of it, you have the transparent enamel on top.
Yes.
The flux. Yeah. Because for cloisonné, we need the flux because then on the piece of paper I've printed with the design, I will create my cloisonné walls, if we can say that, in gold.
Yeah.
Separately, and then I will apply wall by wall on the dial. I just draw by hand the general shape of the design, and then when the whole layout is done, when all the wires are put on it, it goes in the kiln. So the gold wires will like sink a little bit in the flux enamel that has used, and it acts like a glue in a way. So in the picture you see right now, the dial has been fired, and if you look closely, you will see that at some point you have the enamel that by capillarity it goes a little bit around the border of each cloison.
Yes.
And it seals the cloison on the dial, so then I can, if I put the dial upside down, the cloison in gold will not they will not fall. Otherwise, it would be impossible to do. And they are approximately not airtight, but watertight or waterproof. And when I apply the colors with a little brush like this, the colors will remain in the cell I want, more or less. Sometimes by capillarity you have some colors that goes in the wrong cell, so you have to remove it. And it's sometimes difficult because when you have, for example, let's say in the eye of the viper, and you have some green enamel that goes in this part, you have to remove the green enamel in the eye, otherwise it won't look good in the end. So it's and you have to keep it wet, because as soon as it has dried out, the smallest movement you make on the dial and everything will flow like crazy. That the grain, they will be like dust. So you have to keep the right amount of water on the dial while doing it, not too much, because otherwise everything is going to mix. But yeah, so it's all about keeping all the factors at the right level so that you can have a nice dial in the end.
It's so incredible, right, Johnny? I always thought that you guys were like under the microscope or under the loupe, that you were actually soldering all those pieces together of solid gold. And so everyone understands that that's solid gold, right, Bastien? All that wire?
Yeah, it's solid gold, absolutely.
Solid gold, so everybody knows it's not like gold plated or brass. He's working with solid gold wire. I always thought you soldered everything. That's a really cool to know that you have to fire it once, set your base coat kind of thing, and then let it sink in there. And if it doesn't sink in there correctly, you got to go and manually bend the wire probably to get them closer, so they're each individual little cells for you to fill up. And then fire again and hope and pray that everything goes well again. Then sand again, right, Bastien?
Yeah. So, for the cloisonné, I can sand only in the end, because I have to have enamel all the way up to the top of the cloison of the cell, because the first time I made a cloisonné dial, I was making that on copper, but it was maybe 7 years ago, and I made some cloison. It was really ugly, and I sanded it down after the first firing, but the part of the cloison that was not covered by enamel, it just like collapsed, so the whole thing was wrecked. It was good to go to the trash,
Right.
So I have to make maybe like 5 or 6 layers of the colors, and then when I have enamel right on the top of the cell, I can send down the first time, and then I have to add where there are little holes or where enamel is not completely fully flush with the top of the cloison. I have to add an additional layer, and then I can sand it out, make it flat, and then I make a last firing, and then I can polish it with a flat polishing machine. In the end, the dial is, I put it with some tape on just a jig like this,
Yeah.
and then it goes on a machine, and by hand I polish with several diamond suspension. Actually, 6. Yeah, I start with 30 microns, and it end up with 1/4 of a micron of very fine diamonds. And each time I have to, in each step, between each step, I have to wash, the dial. So I have to remove the tape.
Yeah.
To clean it, because if there is still some 30 micron diamonds in this, and I go to 15 microns, it doesn't make sense. So you have to be careful. So every step is complicated with enamel. That is the rule usually. So nothing is simple with enamel.
But people have to realize what you're saying. So Bastien, or actually with time and time again, they look at something and they are enamored by your skills, but they have to understand that this is weeks of your life to produce one masterpiece that you're okay with. Again, very similar to watchmaking, we have to make sure that it represents our name in independent watchmaking, right? It's not just a giant big company and we're doing a menial, repetitive job. You're doing many, many, many jobs that in an enamel factory in the old days, they were dissected into sub-jobs, right? And subsets.
Right. Yeah.
And this is your art in weeks of your life. It's not just a painting or whatnot, which it is really a painting, but you're painting with enamel.
My God.
That is killer, bro. Wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's one of the most complicated I've made. So actually, it's there is a big company in Japan called Mitsukoshi, and they have several luxury retail shops, like malls in Japan. And at the entrance of one of their main building in this one is in Ginza, there is the statue of a lion, and I was there because we have some retailers there.
Yeah,
I had to take a picture of this lion and make a dial out of it. So there are quite a lot of cloison. I was a little bit
nuts, bro. You're definitely in the nuts club.
Yeah.
you're in our club for sure, bro. Looking at that one, yeah. That's wow.
I still have to say that with enamel, you never reach the 100% perfect dial. I think it never happens, because you always have something that reminds you that it's made by hand and has to go through fire. So when it's in the kiln at 800 degrees Celsius degrees,
yeah,
there is nothing you can do. I cannot put my hand in it to correct something. I have to wait to remove the dial and see, okay, oh shit, something happened, and what can I do about it? Sometimes you have to let go some things, because otherwise you would reject 100% of your job. And then
but Bastien, that's really what a true artist is. And also at the very end, we see these imperfections because we started when there was nothing but what was in our head, right? And other people might not notice any of that. They're but for us, it's actually hard to let go and say, okay, here it is. You can purchase this, my piece of art, and that's what independent watchmaking is. You're one man creating this incredible art, and then you have to let your art back out into the world. It's not just a product. That's what everyone that's interested in this level of independent watchmaking that we all are now, that we've all escalated to in these last 15 to 20 years, that we're all at that pinnacle of what can each person create that is unique to themselves, and you do that. That's your art giving back to the world, man. So you got to give it out, even though there's a couple little imperfections, because I'm not going to see it. I'm half blind, even though I'm a watchmaker anyway. I got to look under a microscope to see it. So do you. You can look at it, right? Take your glasses off. It'll look a million times better, bro.
But if it's so beautiful when you look with a microscope. You know how intricate is it when you have dials. One thing that is maybe not too common. Usually you try to make a monochromatic dial, but I like colors and I like cooking. So when I enamel, it's like cooking, but you have to be more precise when you do things with enamel. And so I said, I want to try. The rule usually is to use the same size of enamel grain to avoid bubbles. And I wanted to have some kind of mosaic. So maybe to take big size of enamel, smaller size. And I said, okay, let's try. And this is not the first one, but this is one of the, exactly this. So you can see it's like a pizza, you have the mozzarella, you have the ham, you have
yeah, sure you've one there.
And the result, it's not the same because it's another model, but it's basically like this.
Yeah, I just love that. Is one of the most beautiful things. Do that.
Of course, each one is different because it's random the way the colors are applied. In this one, it's 11 different shades of blue enamel.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
It's actually this mix here. So I selected 11 shades of blue enamel, and I ground each color to a different grain size, approximately. And then I put everything together, and then I take my little brush and I apply the enamel. And randomly, if there are two dark blue enamel lamps in the same area, I remove one and put a lighter one, so to have something that is a little bit homogeneous.
Wasn't that like a challenge to try to figure out how to fire that correctly? Because if they're all of different sizes, they're all going to fire completely different, right? That must have been, you must have thrown a lot of those away until you got where you needed to go. Amazing, man. Amazing sleepless nights you must have had.
I agree. You're right. But in the end, the result is cool, and having the right mix is allowing me to make that without having too much trouble now. So I love making these because it's in the end it's like an abstract painting, And
absolutely, it's just so beautiful.
You can tweak it, You have a customer asking, okay, I'd like more green in it. I'd like to have less black, and then we can tweak a little bit, to adapt.
Bastien, can you tell people about your timepiece as well, like what movement you're using and how you came about the case? And
so when we started in 2016, or actually 2 years earlier, because we started to think about the project really seriously in 2014. We wanted to make watches that were not affordable, but more attainable to regular people, like me, because I was looking at beautiful Patek Vacheron with fantastic dials, but I knew that I would never be able to buy one for myself. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what can we do to bring some of this, the spirit of it, but to remain realistic in a price point of view. And so we said at first, okay, we're going to use a very basic but good small workhouse movement is the Miyota 9015, so Japanese one at first, because we didn't want to play the Swiss-made card because it was so overused and misused for so long. And we said, okay, we can make some independent watchmaking in Switzerland, being two watchmakers trained in Switzerland, but using a Japanese movement. It was like a statement at first. After maybe 1 year and a half, we switched to a Swiss movement. So now we are using a Celita 300 one premium. It's a good looking movement. It's reliable. We have never had issues so far with it. So we never focused on the movement, at least for now, because of course, price-wise, it would have a serious impact if we were going the in-house movement path or the fancy movement. I'm not saying that we are not going to do it, because we have requests for it, and I think it's the next step for the brand. But we are entirely self-funded. We are not rich from birth, so we have to take each step very carefully and to go step by step. It takes longer than for other brands, but it's the way it is. So
and your cases is made in Switzerland?
No, some parts are now made in Switzerland, but it's also the wish to switch completely in Switzerland.
But you design the cases with using CAD yourself. How do you design them? Use them in CAD, and then you outsource the case parts? Do you polish the case? Tell us a little bit of the assembly and that aspect of your business.
So we have approximately, I guess, like 15 suppliers. So I was first a watchmaker. Johan, my business partner, is a watchmaker too. We met back in 1994 in La Chaux-de-Fonds in watchmaking school. We graduated together, and we took two different paths. Johan became a watch engineer, watch design movement. So he designed movement his entire careers for Renaud Papy, and then for La Joux-Perret. And finally, for 8 years, he was designing movement for Richard Mille. So he's the technical guy. I'm more the aesthetic guy. And after graduating, I worked as a salesperson in fine jewelry for a while. I worked as a watchmaker in Valtham for a very short period of time, because it was just to help a guy. And then I started an education as a product designer. So I became a watch designer, and I made most of my career as a watch designer for an independent studio, working for many brands, and then for several years at Corum, designing watches, which I actually was not very fond of. I had to do the design, but it was not really my cup of tea in terms of aesthetics.
Aesthetic, yeah.
And then I became a product manager for a private label company, so I had to oversee the development process of small brands or a little bit bigger brands. And we did the same for Lundis Bleus. So I designed the watch. We made the 3D. Johan made the technical drawings. And then we asked for a quotation to the people in our networks that we already knew very well. So we picked the one knew were the best for our project. And we received the components separately. Then we assemble it, the crystal, the gasket, everything. So it's in like I don't know, maybe 20 pieces. And then we make the assembly of the case. The movements are not modified. We just have a little bit custom rotor on the back.
Right. So in the beginning, what I'm getting at, Bastien, is me and Johnny always go through this. So other younger watchmakers or watchmakers or non-watchmakers, trying to get going in independent watchmaking, we try to show them the stuff that no one else will talk about, the behind the scenes of how did you get out of the gate. We don't really care about where you're going, but we always tell people, like a turtle, take your time. It's going to take a long time. Yeah. And we love to talk to people who they didn't go to the suit and tie guy or to the bank, and then, which we know that's going to explode in the end. We want to show people the people that are going to be here for a very long time. So your story is very interesting to explain to people. So what I'd like to ask is that those first group of watches, right? You guys, you said, screw it, man. We work for everybody. we're gonna do this, right? We're gonna break out. You know, it's like a heavy metal band. You know, screw the world, man. We're gonna show you we're taking over the world, bro. You know, that's my attitude. And I just happen to take over 2 planets, right? My music's playing on 2 planets. So it is all possible, right? Anything is possible if we really work at it. Those first group of watches, you had to go get those cases. You guys had to dig into your pockets, figure out a way. You probably dug into your aunt's pockets. I don't know where the $20 came from here and $20 came from there. We don't want to know. But how many cases were you able to get? Because the problem that everyone has in independent watchmaking is the small quantities. We need to get out of the gate at the beginning. And then, of course, later on, too, because most of us want to stay small, we only need 5. We only need 8. How did you find someone that would do a beautiful case like that? Low quantities like that? Did you pull a favor? How did you come about getting out of the gate like that?
I had the chance to happen to know the guys in the business, so I knew which company would be agreeing to do what we needed, and it was just, you know.
And how many was your first when you first, you know, your first launch? How many did you?
Oh, we had to launch 300 cases.
Wow.
We bought, you know, the crystal, we bought them separately. So we bought a little bit less of crystal because they are quite expensive when in this box style. So we had to buy them. We knew it was a risk, but we didn't have the change because we could buy maybe 200 or 150, but the unit price would be the same, would be higher, you know, so we would pay the same amount, you know. So we took the 300 cases and we started to sell little by little, you know.
That's great, man.
But isn't it a beautiful case design?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's absolutely. I have seen this watch or a number of Lundis Bleus watches up close in person. And the case design, it's like a UFO in a cradle that isn't exactly touching. And it is, I just love them. And I think the combination of all the different aspects of the, it's maybe not, that's not the right image to show there, but the lugs are not actually touching the case. So the case is that sort of suspended.
Yes, you have the picture where you see the different parts of the watch in drawing.
Yeah, the design, the drawings, yes.
Yeah, you see, so the case, the lugs are a part of the case back.
The case back, yeah.
And you have the case band, which has these little bumps, so we can put the screws in it. Yep. And the crystal on the back is inserted from the inside of the watch, which is not usual because we have our logo on top of it, you know. So we had to add a little piece inside to prevent the crystal from moving towards the movement if we were going to push on the crystal for any reason. So it looks kind of simple, you know, it's a round case, you have small lugs, but in the end there are a lot of thought behind it because we wanted to show the movement and not to show it too much because it's a good movement, but it's not a very nice movement, you know. It's not high horology or watchmaking, you know. Yeah. So we said, okay, we have our logo, it's good looking, so we are going to show the movement for the people who maybe buy the first automatic watch and they want to see it moving, but for people who are more seasoned in their journey in watchmaking, they have seen many movements. They don't really want to see it, the whole part of the movement, and so they have our logo. So it was balance of having a regular movement and a nice design, and some very basic things. But you know about the crown, you know, this shape like a mushroom, like this. Yeah. It's because when I was working at Corum, I was always fighting because I had some pieces that was lent to me to wear as a designer, you know. And the crowns were always so uncomfortable, you know. They were scratching the hand. It was like you had some scars, you know. In the end, it was so sharp, you know, razor sharp, and it was not comfortable. So I said, okay, if we make a watch one time, I want the crown to be comfortable, you know, because when I wear the watch, I don't want to feel pain every time I make a model, but it's common sense. But sometimes you see in some watches, they have made a nice CAD drawing with razor sharp angles. Oh, it's good looking. Then produce it this way, and in the end, it's very difficult to wear. And in the end, the watches we make are made to be worn, not to be in a safe or.
Yes, right. Because that's the problem with big corporate companies is the designers design things and they're not watchmakers, you know, or they're not just they don't follow through. You know, when it becomes personal, and that's another aspect of independent watchmaking, that every little teeny thing, we've seen it. We've either been restoring watches for many, many years, so we know what, like you said, what might be uncomfortable, and represents our personal name when we sell it, and when we give that love over to somebody else. It's cool. Yeah. How long were you at Corum when Michael was the CEO? Because I worked with him. I figured you're in La Chaux-de-Fonds, so because they had flown me over, did some stuff at Corum. They wanted to make a watch in my name and all that kind of stuff.
I started in 2008, and I left in 2013 or 14.
So you were there when Michael was running the company. His father passed away by then.
Yeah, 6 months after I arrived.
So you were probably there when I was there.
Okay, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's funny. It was a good time. Michael was a really cool guy. Yeah.
The brand was cool, you know. Yeah. I was not about the product. It was not my cup of tea, you know. In terms of, I like, you know, simpler designs, but maybe with more insight or more.
But all of that, Johnny, right? All of that history, right? Your walk from watchmaking school through all the companies, all that adds up into what makes you and what your independent brand becomes. And that's what we try to show to everyone. It's that whole pathway. You know, if someone just comes straight out of watchmaking school and then starts to do whatever they're going to do, there's not all that much history there yet. And that's why we say it'd be really wonderful if you do. You have that passion to make your own timepiece. You know, go at it straight out of school, but also, you know, apprentice, work at companies if you can. If you're not in my country, but if you're in Switzerland or Germany or France or somewhere, you know, and get that experience, because it's not just a bench experience. It's that life experience of what not to do. That's what I'm trying to say. You just explained it. Yeah. The fucking, pardon my language. The crown is killing me, right? Like, who would produce this crap, you know, right? Like, if I made a watch, that would never happen. And then when you go make your watch, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's the virtue is to be patient when you have this idea. I had this idea for a little bit less than 20 years, you know. So I always discussed with Johan, and we started working on a project already back in 2004, you know. And I was pushing, and in the end we were all, money-wise, it's too tight. We will never do it, and we stopped working on the project, and we started another one maybe 2 years later. Basically, you know, just to think what we could do to do something, because it was maybe out of frustration, you know, as creative people, you know, working for brands or companies you are not necessarily really fond of, you know, and you had to do, as a designer, okay, you have the marketing or the CEO saying, okay, you have to do this or that. Okay, where is creativity or the insight? What can you bring more than just executing, you know, what you are asked to do? And maybe it has changed over years, but when I was a designer, it was this way. I don't know if it's still that way today, but
it'll be that way forever and ever and ever and ever. That's corporate companies, not even necessarily just watchmaking. That's just how it's done, and that is the epitome of what separates independent watchmaking from everything else. Apart, you know, it pushes us all to be unique, but it pushes us all to be the best at what we're producing. We're usually just one, if not two, if maybe three people kind of businesses that are going along, and that's what really drives innovation. It's no different than in music. It's the same thing, when you break out of making corporate music for the radio, say in the old days, pop music was made for the radio. How many albums, how many singles can you sell? How many times can it get played on the radio? Oh, so that one person makes a song and it works. So then everyone examines that song to see how many verses, how many choruses, how much silence was there between each breath, everything to see why the human liked that, and then there's more made. It's just corporate bullshit, right? And that happens in watchmaking as well. Independent watchmaking, or what the music I helped to create, thrash metal, was the complete opposite. Like punk rock music. It was anti-disestablishment, anti-that, getting on the radio. We don't want to be on the radio. Back then, we didn't even want to be on MTV, which is the only place that they played music videos back then. It's the opposite. Stay underground, be who you are, and represent yourself. And that's what independent watchmaking is. That's what we're seeing with you once again, man.
Absolutely, Dan. Because I tell you what, there is something here that we have not really touched on yet, and that is a lot of the watch makers and people that we've had along. Watches are a one in a lifetime acquisition. What Bastien is doing, your brand, your Lundis Bleus, you're starting off at around about 3,000 Swiss franc mark, aren't you? So you're not inaccessible. Your watches are starting off at a very accessible level for independent watchmaking. I can remember we had Stefan Kettlers on down. You can remember, and we were saying, you gotta make a living out of this thing, and. Okay, I know, Bastien, that your turnover is maybe on a slightly different level. It's still very, very accessible for independent watchmen. And we have seen what you have been doing, the workmanship that goes in, and we haven't even touched on some of the your beautiful Europe was on a enamel. We haven't even looked at that there. Okay, that's not available at €3,000, but you're accessible, and that is the thing. People think, Dan, that independent watchmaking is the price of a car, at least. Yeah. And here we are looking at this level of dedication and craftsmanship, and as passionate as any person who's working in watchmaking, Dan. To create these things.
The reason why we were able to reach that price point is because we accepted to make some compromise.
Yeah,
we have added precious metal golds, everything manufactured in Switzerland in very small quantities with the in-house movement. We could have done all that, but
5 times the price.
Yeah, so. We said, okay, we put the real value, or what costs money the most, on one component, and it's the dial, and it's like the face on a person, So that's why we remain, let's say, not cheap but attainable, and we mix some features that are really high-end. Like, for example, the strap you see on this watch. It's made by an artisan in Le Locle. She's only making one strap at a time. She's working for many independent watchmakers, for example. Butilainen straps comes from the same.
Yeah.
So we can offer that kind of high-end custom strap on our watches with a cloisonné dial. But then we have a more regular movement, and some components coming also from Asia, from China, from Switzerland too. So because with the cloisonné enamel dial, it's over $100,000. But you have these three: you have the in-house movement, you have the precious case, you have the aura and the resale value of the watch also, of course. But what would be the point to go after, for example, Patek? It
Yeah.
was not our goal in the very beginning. It was to offer these things, but at a price point that remain. Maybe it's not more realistic, but in a price range that we felt comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right,
as you said,
but you don't know where you're going to go. See, you've already mentioned within. So that's part of independent watchmaking is, don't borrow the money from the banks. That's my personal opinion, and a lot of others, because we've seen people start out at a younger age, right, and get very famous in the past. A lot of our friends, and it all looks good. We're going to expand. And they were alone when they started, and it worked, right? They were making a good living, and they were creating their art. And then they go to the investors and the banks and the big buildings, and now they're making 500 pieces. Now they're making 1,000 pieces, and then 1,500 pieces, or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden, somehow, some way, they don't even own the name of their business anymore. Yeah. It's taken away from them. And then the same gentleman is now 70 or 80 years old, and he's back to being alone in his home, like I like to be, working from home, creating his art all over again. And even though he's burnt from being burnt, he's happier now, making 5 or 8 pieces a year that are masterpieces. So that's the message that I try to get at, and I think John is with me on that. To all the other people that watch our show, it's better to be slow like a turtle. You're doing wonderful, but you've already mentioned, like, maybe someday I'll have a different movement inside. The word in-house is played already anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's bullshit, man. We all know it's bullshit, right? You'll have a movement that you're happy creating the way you want to make it happen. Okay, that's reality, right? Maybe you'll be making it there. Maybe it's your cousin, whatever that is that fits your brand, your way, your art. That's independent watchmaking, as far as I'm concerned. That's the beauty of it. You could have Masahiro, right, in Japan. Yeah. He creates his way. Yeah. I create my way. Exactly. That's what's cool. That's the story. So we can't wait to see all that, whatever that is in the future. So if you can't get all that funding and you don't have it, which is millions and millions of dollars.
Even if I was asking banks to borrow me or lend me. Lend me money. They would not, I know that it has to be organic, it has to come from our pockets. So it takes time. And anyway, I want to remain small, because I don't want to become a businessman doing
completely. Yeah.
I think
you realize that.
What I want.
I think it's when you realize that you don't need that. You don't need to be massive. You just do the most important thing, Dan, is if you're happy.
I don't want to become rich. I earn maybe less than half that I was earning when I was a watch designer, and some month even less. But it's okay. I do what I like, and I hope that. Some people understand that if
you're building something, you're building something though. You are building. Lundis Bleus are going to really, there's no way I see that can miss. So particularly the way that you're managing it, micromanaging every step of the way. You're hands on. You're not delegating out to any other parties or anything else. So you're looking after business. You're doing Dan, we've talked about this many times before. He's doing everything. He's a social media man. He's a sales contact. Everything. Caretaker. He cleans the atelier.
Well, Bastien, I think we've all noticed. I was just about getting to that. Where your social media presence, the clarity of your pictures, the way you present your company, these are all, again, things that really separate you from a lot of other people. I mean, you have a unique art, obviously, we know that, right? But you're there. I don't know how you find the time to do that with working and doing everything else. And everyone has to know that's part of the story as well when they purchase one of your masterpieces,
Yeah, and they are.
Yeah. So, I mean, social media is so important. You know, you got to utilize it, but you got to utilize it correctly. You got to build your brand correctly, what you represent. There is no difference between an independent watchmaker doing it correctly and a giant brand as far as social media goes. You know, we still have to have our idea who we are. Sometimes we don't know who we are because we are artists. Most of us really don't. We have an idea, but how to represent it and at onset and, you know, roll with it and keep rolling along. And it's hard. People don't understand. Hey, what's the logo going to look like? What's this font going to look like? How is this picture okay? You know, how do I answer that person? And meanwhile, at the same time, holy crap, the oven's on. I'm ruining the dial. It's like we.
I spent 4 weeks in that.
Yeah, and we're men. Most of us are. I mean, a lot of us are men. We can't multitask to save our lives. You know, it's impossible.
But I see these social networks as a, you know, like a diary. You know, you sometimes I just do something, or I take a picture and I post something, and there is not really a strategy. It's just to give some inputs of what is going on at the Lundis Bleus workshop, and that's modest. But
I think social media is the all-time great leveler. So you're talking about between big brands and small brands. Yes, big brands can buy social media marketing. Small brands just have to grow organically. But I would rather have a following that was organic rather than bought. And you know, because you're not going to get a response. Dan, we could do a marketing campaign that would get loads of subscribers to the channel. And by the way, if you're watching this, people, subscribe. Right? So, you know.
Well, you can start this off like every YouTube video guy. Yo, what's up?
Yeah, well, I don't care. I do copy those. I give you what's called the South Arm Master, you know. And so, but it's better to grow that. Or what you're doing is growing organically. You're not going to lose followers because they're coming to you for a reason. They're coming to you because they like what they see and they're subscribing and following to your art. So I think social media is a fantastic leveler of small and big brands to be able to, so that the little guy can pitch out there to the same level as the big guy. If you've got your act together, if you're doing the right kind of content.
Yeah. But look how hard, you know, Bastien knows what he's doing. He's got distributors in outside of Switzerland, all over the world, right, Bastien? So he's figured out the marketing, how to do the marketing. So he's not doing everything you name, plus he's a marketing director, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to understand how and what we all do as independent watchmakers to get our love and our product out there and to keep moving along, so we really don't have to conform to working in a corporate environment, because that's the stuff that's fueled our independence. And even outside of watchmaking now, you know, due to the pandemic, I think the whole world has realized there's so many people that can govern themselves and work from home, and that's changed now forever. Millions and millions and millions of people are going to be in all kinds of fields will be working from home. The way houses are built will be more. It won't be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's going to be 2-bedroom, 2-office, 2-bathroom houses from now on for a lot of people. The whole world has changed, so it's not really weird anymore for someone to say, you know, it's an in-house movement. Really, that term works for me because this is my house. You know, everybody else, as far as I'm concerned, you're all liars. You know?
Hopefully for the better. You know, there's definitely been a huge sea change in the way people are working, and so I have a couple of questions that have been. There's one there from Jose Andres Garcia Saez, who has asked, how long does it take you to make the simplest watch of your collection? So I think that means in terms of enamel, you know, that type of process, or your stone dials. Sorry, we didn't even get talking about your stone dials yet, you know, but maybe do the second half.
It's another story for stones, but for enamel, a dial like this, so from
Let's
from
see.
A to Z. So the a translucent
Yeah.
royal blue enamel. It's about 10 hours. So from, or maybe even more, but around 10 hours, to make the plate. Then to
Yeah.
make the picture by hand, I use some cutters to do that.
Yeah.
Then I have to fire several times in the kiln without enamel, so just to oxidize the copper that is in the alloy, then remove it in some sulfuric acid bath, being careful, and then cleaning it thoroughly, doing it again 3 times, then applying enamel on the back, so counter enamel on the top, putting at the center a little piece of cloisonné enamel. On each dial there is, at the center, because my dial is flat, there are no borders here. So I have to add here at the center a small piece of silver, a wire silver here at the center, so that at the end the enamel will lay flush, with it won't make this drop.
Like all the old pocket watch dials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on Psycho at the date, the enamel.
It caves in.
It's not bad, but I don't like it. So I want it to be flush. So I have this little piece, and then it goes in the kiln. First firing, then sanding, then second, then third, then maybe fourth or fifth, and then polishing, and then soldering the feet on the back, and then printing it. So yes, 10 hours is probably, for the simplest enamel dial, is 10 hours.
Your pad printing right there in your workshop?
Yeah, I have a small manual machine. It's maybe 40 or 50 years old, but it's good as new, never go.
Yeah. And that's another thing, because they add to another aspect of Lundis Bleus is the minimalist sense that you get off, and that the markings they're very minimal. If I'm looking for the right word, and but it's superb. So here, tell me this: when you're working in your atelier, do you be listening to any music?
Oh yeah, but I'm not a metal guy, so I don't really know much about it.
Tell us that now.
You're in Texas, so you maybe love that too. But I'm a blues fan, so I listen to blues music. Yeah, and my favorite bluesmen are actually from Texas. They are dead for long, but they were Albert Collins, my old time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kicks ass, man.
Yeah,
You're into old time blues, man. The roots of blues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where it all
the king.
from.
Yeah, and the Texas Cannonball. So Freddie King too.
Freddie King, yeah.
Fantastic.
Wow, that's right. That's a trip. He's like lives in La Chaux-de-Fonds, and that's what you're listening to. That's great, man. Did you grow up listening to the blues like that too?
I think I discovered the blues at the age of 15, and since then it never left me. So it's really the music. Sometimes I listen to electronic music, some classical music, some folk music, whatever. But blues is really my music roots, So I always come back to blues.
That's great, man. Well, all those guys influenced and laid the groundwork for all of us, because from them, then it was, Clapton who, learned everything from them and showed us how to play the guitar, right? Or Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Same thing. It all comes from those guys, and then generationally got handed down and sped up into the type of music that I played. And you can recognize that within my music when I'm playing lead guitar a lot too as well. There's a lot of all the scales from blues and all that. That all comes out, and it's everywhere.
It's right through. Without a doubt, yeah.
Once again, because the blues is screaming the pain of the person, what they were living. Just like our my watchmaking here screams my pain.
It's all about love.
Shit don't work again,
Love and emotion. Otherwise, it doesn't work doing it.
For sure.
Wow, that's good. So you listen to music when you're working, or is that just mainly at home?
No. all the time. When I
All
work,
the time?
All the time.
That's great, man.
it's there is silent. It's not good for my mind because I'm going everywhere. I'm getting lost in my thoughts. So music helps me concentrate. I know it's contrary for many people, but not for me.
That's good. It realigns your soul. That's cool, man. So your workshop is in La Chaux-de-Fonds, and you also live in La Chaux-de-Fonds?
I live in Neuchâtel, so it's 25 minutes from there.
Wow.
A little bit more when there is snow.
Yeah.
And it's a snow now, yeah.
Yeah. It's these days. Today it was okay, but a few days ago it was really bad weather. So sometimes the longest it took me to go from the workshop to home was like 2 hours.
Wow.
Because there were, I mean, people live in La Chaux-de-Fonds. They should know about driving on snow, right?
Yeah.
But every fucking year, the first time.
One time I was staying at the hotel on the lake at Neuchâtel, and Michael from Corum picked me up there in a snowstorm to go to the Corum factory in La Chaux-de-Fonds. It was bad, man. It was bad. Everybody's sliding all over the road. BMWs with no winter tires. Like, what are they thinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
It's like
you're
in Switzerland, right? Where's the snow tires, bro?
You're shooting to the scene of the accident in reverse at 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you going to be okay getting home tonight? Because we've kept you up.
Yeah, sure.
Let's shoot a football.
Nobody, and there is no snow on the road today. So it's
cool. That's good. So, well, here, listen, Bastien, it has been a fantastic conversation with you tonight. It has been a real treat to get to look inside the world, what you do, what Lundis Bleus is. We didn't even get talking about Lundis Bleus either. That's for another time, Bastien, because I hope that you will accept our invitation to come back someday and what's happening sometime down the line a little bit, and we can find out why is your company called Lundis Bleus in the first place, because that is a great story too. And so for next time, and there will be a next time. And so to everybody who has been watching us right and watching Bastien Vuilliomenet.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Very good.
Thank you so much for tuning in, Bastien. You hold on for a moment or two after we finished here, and but from me, from Dan.
Yeah, it's totally, man. Like, it's been really cool. Like, seriously, to get just some insight into this, what you do is really rare. I hope people understand that this isn't just like a normal conversation. It's really, really, really rare to get to some of these secrets and know how you started, where you ended up, and what your company stands for, and that you did it. You got out of that corporate world. Your watches are being sold all over the world. I know they're huge in Japan, and we just wish you so much success and happiness and peace and love, man. And just keep moving on, and we'll definitely come and visit you. Obviously, we're not going to come in the winter because we don't want to see that snow, bro. I live too much there, but we just wish you all the best, my man.
Totally. Everybody, thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back again next week for another very special edition of In the Metal with myself, Dan Spitz, and a guest from next week. So thank you so much.